Hi guys, how is everybody? Hope everybody is doing well. Welcome back to the Keys to AWS Optimization. I'm excited to be back on season 11. This is my first time back. John was hosting last week, did a great episode on compute. Apologies, first of all, for my background. I know it's not of this standard normally. I have my virtual background. If you don't remember my background, this is what it normally looks like. But today I'm in the Dublin office, and rather than make this episode terrible on broadband, I will just take this down. But I hope everybody is doing well. A couple of housekeeping things before we kick off into our session today about container chargeback. Just a few reminders. Every week we'll be here on Twitch, but don't forget you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel to check out all of our videos on there. If I just throw up the link, that is where you'll see all of our content, all of our partner videos, all of our shorts, everything we edit up there. And also, if you're going to reInvent, feel free to come check out my session, COP 403. I'll make sure to share more information on social media. But I have two lovely guests with me today, and let's introduce them. Before I do, let's do the show intro. Welcome to the Keys to AWS Optimization, the show we share concepts. Oh God, I've had a few weeks off, guys, and I've forgotten my own intro. Welcome to the Keys to AWS Optimization, the show we share concepts, solutions, and optimizations to help you save money in the cloud. So let's go, first of all, with Manoj. Let's do your intro. Let's do your 1-minute origin story and tell the folks at home who you are and what you do for AWS.
Absolutely. Hey, Steph, thank you for hosting this show. This is amazing. My name is Manoj. I'm a principal product manager with AWS. My focus is cost allocation. I've been with Amazon for 6 months now. Before that, I've done various things in the Bay Area.
Nice. And George, do you want to go?
Yes. Again, thank you, Steph, for hosting the show. My name is George John. I'm a product manager in the Amazon EKS team. I'm based out of Seattle. Been with AWS now for several years, and the last few years have been with EKS. Really excited to be here, and thank you all for joining the session.
Perfect. All right, so let's get into a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. So this came about because there was an announcement, was it reInvent? I think it was reInvent last year, was the cost allocation information, for containers. Because we heard your voice that you guys wanted to be able to go down to the task level to allocate spend when it came to your containers. Now, those of you who watch the show often know I am not a containers person. I sadly haven't dove into it in extreme detail, but that is why I have these guests to come on and explain it. So what we're going to be doing is George is going to take us through some of the nuance of EKS, ECS, and then we're also going to be going into things like the allocation stuff, and we're going to do a demo of that. So George, do you want to kind of kick us off and answer a dumb question of mine, which is what is the difference between EKS and ECS?
Absolutely. Happy to do that. So I think to answer that question, we should look at the history a little bit. So I think going back to early 2010s, that's when you saw, Docker coming out. You saw a lot of customers starting to use containers. Now, what is containers, right? Containers is really a new way to package and deploy your applications. Containers provided users with a lot of benefits, right? One of which is, you package up your application irrespective of whether it's running in your laptop, you're a developer working on a laptop, or whether you're deploying it to the cloud, whether you're deploying it to different environments, you get the same behavior out of the application. Containers made it easy to move applications across different environments. Containers are lightweight, efficient, so on. So there's a lot of benefits with containers, and we saw a massive uptick in the adoption of containers, I would say 2010, 2012, 2013, that time frame. And one of the challenges that customers ran after adopting containers is now managing containers at scale. So, a lot of customers ask AWS, hey, can you help with the undifferentiated heavy lifting of managing containers so customers or users can focus on the core business value, building value for their end users? So in response to that, AWS launched Amazon ECS, which is Elastic Container Service, in 2015. But we didn't stop our investments with ECS, right? We continued investing in ECS, and we launched Amazon EKS, which stands for Elastic Kubernetes Service, in 2017. So I think it went in preview, when we launched it in preview in 2017, and it went in GA in 2018. So customers who liked using Kubernetes for their container orchestration, they had this managed service from AWS, Elastic Kubernetes Service. So those are the two options. And
Okay.
Steph, I think you asked a very interesting. I didn't really answer your question of which one should I use. Let me just complete that also. Just to close that out, we say that, AWS, we give customers the choices. And the one simple way to think about which container service to use is really looking at the simplicity versus flexibility. Simplicity being Amazon ECS was designed with simplicity in mind from day one. Our goal was to minimize the number of steps or number of decisions you have to take with regard to the compute, networking, security. So the goal is, how can we quickly enable you to deploy your containers to production? And ECS, AWS native, AWS opinionated way of doing container management at scale. But on the other hand, we had a lot of teams who really liked the vibrant and ecosystem, the community of Kubernetes. They liked Kubernetes was open, had consistent APIs. They liked how flexible it was. And for those customers who like Kubernetes for their container orchestration, we have Amazon EKS. I know it's a long way of answering a question, but I think that if I have to wrap everything up, which container service you use really depends on the characteristics of your application, the attributes of your application, and your operational preferences.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's the same with everything with these kind of nuances, which one to choose. And I think something you touched on with the managed service aspect for these is a big selling point for a lot of kind of container workloads. People, the same as you would, the reason why people use RDS. I did this today in the talk I was doing at the Dublin Day, was like talking about Graviton. And I was like, use managed services with Graviton because we already manage the service. So you can take advantage of these kind of things. So I have a question before we move any further, which is, how does pricing work with these two services? Do you want to touch on kind of, maybe we were also going to talk about maybe the elements of the service and the task and that stuff. Do you want to do that first and then talk about the pricing?
Yeah, so I think I want to quickly share a slide because I'm assuming the audience here have various level of experience with Kubernetes and EKS. So just to level set, and when we get into pricing, just understanding these components helps explain things a little better. So let me just share my slide here.
Yeah, I think, and before anybody panics, I know we don't love PowerPoints on this, so you keep going, George, or you pull that up. We're not going to do a big PowerPoint, but this is something I like to do, is we bring up the architecture. It's probably going to be, do it.
Let me know once the slide.
Oh, and Sasha, go back one. There we go.
Okay, so this very high level, very simplified. Like I said, I don't want to do a PowerPoint presentation, just one slide, and that's it. So the idea here is that if you look at a Kubernetes cluster, there are two parts to it, right? So on the top here, the things about the red line is the first part, which is the Kubernetes control plane. So control plane is like the brain or the command center of a cluster. So control plane is the one which kind of manages the different components in the cluster. And EKS, being a managed Kubernetes service, that's control plane is fully managed by Amazon EKS. So the provisioning of the control plane, the securing it, scaling, running, operating, all that is availability, resilience, all that is EKS's responsibility. And the second part of the cluster is the Kubernetes data plane. This is where you have the worker nodes, or in other words, when you deploy your application, a containerized application, those applications run on the worker nodes. Now, there are different compute options that EKS has, but for this presentation and to just simplify things, let's just assume the compute or the worker node option is EC2 instance.
Okay.
Now, the bottom part, the Kubernetes data plane, it runs in customer's account, in your VPC, in your accounts, and you can choose how many EC2 instances you want, what types of EC2 instances they are, how long you run, and typically based on your requirements, your application requirements, you decide on that. Now, coming back to why I shared this from a cost standpoint, the cost visibility, like figuring out the cost for the control plane is pretty straightforward. We charge you an hourly cost for EKS. So depending on how long your EKS cluster is up and running, you pay an hourly cost. So it's typically 10 cents an hour for on EKS standard support. So that is, I guess, not that complex. Easy to understand, easy to figure out, easy to kind of do the chargeback. Where things are a little bit more interesting is in the bottom part, the Kubernetes data plane, and that is what the crux of this discussion, where we'll talk about the feature we launched and how you can use that. But let me just maybe take a little bit of time explaining why is that complex. If you think about the data plane, you can just say it's just EC2 instances. I know the price for EC2 instances. I know how long they run. Maybe this information is already there in cost and usage reports. Why is that complex, right? The complexity kind of arises back to what I said earlier with regards to containers and how some of the benefits containers bring. So one of the key benefits that containers bring is the the efficiency it brings to table. So that means that typically you're not running one container in EC2 instance, right? You're running multiple containers in a single EC2 instance. Now, these containers might belong to multiple applications or multiple application dev teams. These teams could be belonging to different business units. Now figuring out, okay, I had these 10 different apps running in my single EC2 instance. How do I figure out how should I charge this particular app A? How much of the EC2 did they use? So that's where the complexity arises with containers, and we'll dive more into the feature we have and how we can solve it in a bit.
Perfect. No, that's pretty helpful. And while we're chatting about ECS, EKS, I'm going to do a little poll because everyone knows I love a poll. So quick question for you all. Remember, we do this via the chat, and then we have to do this in StreamYard in here. There we go. So, okay, so I have to keep it on this. So, one in the chat, one for ECS. Oh no, I've put EKS twice. This is how you know it's going to be. I feel like it's going to be one of those days. Let me change that. While I'm doing that, Manoj, because you have moved on to this as a service recently, right? So when it came to looking at this new service, this cost allocation with the EKS, what were some of the things that when you talk to customers about it, or when you talk to other people about it generally, what are some key parts of working with containers that you think people should know for this kind of work?
Yeah, actually, kind of when you're building microservices, right? So the good part of container is that you can actually drive efficiency. You can actually put in any number of containers within a kind of instance, a compute instance, right? That is a good part of it. The difficult part is managing such scale, orchestrating it, and more importantly, the cost allocation part of it, right? Now, we do have a lot of good tools that does cost allocation for resources. For example, we have cost categories, we have tagging mechanisms, we have cost allocation tags. These tools help you look at cost from a resource perspective, right? But what happens when you start sharing resources, for example, in this particular case, right? Where you're running, let's say, 10 containers. I'm making it up. It could be much higher than that. You're running 10 pods, right? Now, these 10 pods belongs to, let's say, 4 namespaces belonging to 4 departments. Now, how do I, as a FinOps operator in a company or a CFO of the company, right? How do I basically do like show back and charge back for these resources that's being used to these departments, right? That becomes a very big problem. It's not just specific to EKS and containers, but there are many other shared resources like storage buckets, right? There are database services that come into picture. Networking is a big one, right? Data transfer. So it's actually a pretty complex problem, and kind of addressing it takes time and a very meticulous thought process around it. So we are going to start first with containers, which is actually one of the most asked feature from customers. So we'll start there, and then we'll expand. I'll spend some time on the roadmap, but towards the end of the talk. But at the end of the day, cost allocation is a complex problem. Containers are really complex to handle. So that's kind of the preamble of my talk.
Brilliant. All right, let's go back to the stream. Okay, so can you guys see my screen? What do you use more?
Yes, I can.
Yes, okay. Okay, so in the chat, we need 1 for ECS and 2 for EKS. Curious and more ECS focused, EKS person. Yes, I'm talking to you. Come on, chat. I need some people replying. It's really strange because I can't see anything because I'm only on my laptop. And if you were joined us, you can see I'm not in my normal office. I'm in the Dublin office actually, and so I haven't got my monitors or my microphones and stuff like that. So okay, so we got a nice split. Oh, more ECS. Okay, interesting. Oh, I love this. It keeps going up and down and back and forth. So yeah, as always, guys, make sure you are putting questions, comments in the chat. We want to see all the things and all the questions we can help you with, because this is an interesting topic. I was actually doing a meetup last night in Dublin, and someone mentioned it, and one of the customers was like, "Oh, talk about it," and I was like, "Oh, you're a day too early, my friend. I have not done my Twitch episode yet, so I'm not sure of all the ins and outs of it." Perfect. All right, thanks, guys. But yeah, any questions, pop them in the chat. Right, George, anything else you want us to know? Do we need to cover any ECS stuff as well before we continue?
I think the feature we are talking about, split cost allocation data, the feature I think that Manoj is going to also give a demo later on, kind of applies for both ECS and EKS. I think you have similar capability, even though today we're going to be focusing more on EKS. So by the fact that I think users should get a good idea of what that and how it applies in ECS once we go through EKS. So I think I'm at least from I'll let Manoj kind of go through those details.
Yeah, cool. All right, Manoj, over to you. So maybe we can talk obviously about the solution and the roadmap, but when you kind of pitch this to customers or the other people here at Amazon, because I know obviously part of the product team and whatnot, what's like the biggest selling point? You kind of touched on this, but it was all about being able to cost allocate correctly for containers, right?
Yeah. So I think the biggest selling point or the value proposition that we communicate is we basically drive visibility into their cost systems, and then basically drive that visibility of the cost will drive accountability, right? At the end of the day. It's all about that, because customers would want to know first, where are the costs happening, right? What are the key the cost centers for them, right? Once they understand that thing, then they can figure out mechanisms to do like chargeback. They can actually say that, okay, department finance, you spend this much, so you're accountable for this, right? And this is important for large deployments and large customers, because they have very complex organizations, sometimes running 3,000, 4,000 accounts, right? So this complexity of deployment and the complexity of the infrastructure drives the necessity for this thing. So at the end of the day, the value proposition is fundamentally that you drive visibility on your costs, and that will lead to accountability overall. This is the classic like FinOps principle.
Perfect. Okay. So did you have something you wanted to show us before you went into the demo?
Yeah, quickly. I will actually, I promise that I will not spend too much time on slides, but what I'm going to do is just set the context a little bit. And then we'll actually go into do some demos. Fundamentally, what I would like to do is just show the configuration capabilities. How do you basically set up split cost allocation, and then I will show some queries. How do you run queries? What the tables look like, and then we can have some questions in that session. Right? I think we spend good time on the preamble on why cost allocation is important, right? And as I said before, visibility, accountability, extremely important for customers. And this also leads to something that I missed before, is wastage, right? The information that we gather or collect as part of your cost allocation problem can also be used to optimize your infrastructure in the in the future, right? For example, this particular capability will help you to identify the wastage of your resources, right? You can actually, I will actually show through walk you through this demo. You can actually see that we also kind of discover unused costs, right? You can have an instance that's used by, let's say, a lot of containers, but there will be still resources left unused. So this will help you kind of identify those unused. For example,
always want to get that saving for those unused resources.
Exactly.
Save some money.
Okay, so let's kind of get into it, right? So basically, what is cost allocation?
Oh my God! Wait! I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I have just realized, I know this is called SCAD, but I did not put together that was SCAD from the split cost allocation data. And I just feel like, also to call out, we do refer to it to SCAD a lot. So if you've heard of SCAD, this is it. But I just am an idiot. So I just want to tell everybody, I don't know why I had not announced my idiocy, but sorry, continue.
Okay, cool. Okay, no worries. So fundamentally, what is it? This is actually a new set of data that we collect for cost and usage. And make it available in your cost and usage report. which actually kind of helps you to, as we talked about, like analyze your data, understand the data, and figure out what the wastage is, how your systems are being used, and what is the cost implication of that usage, right? Again, this is a shared cost problem, so it's not specific to EKS or ECS. We're starting with ECS and EKS, but we'll add more capabilities in the future. Fundamentally, the key takeaway here is that this is actually a shared cost allocation problem. We have a lot of toolings for cost allocation of resources, but when it becomes, when the infrastructure is shared among multiple tenants, for example, multiple namespaces, the problem becomes even more complex, right? So this is a shared cost problem. It's very important to understand. It works for ECS and EKS today. It will work for your compute instances like EC2 and Fargate. Yeah? Now, how does it work? Stop me, Stefan, and ask questions as I go.
Yeah. I'll just quickly ask one now, which is, does this work in CUR 2.0?
Yes, it does. It does.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. It works in the legacy CUR and CUR 2.0.
So it's in both. In the legacy CUR, I don't know if you know this one, but I know in CUR 2.0, if people wanted this feature, they could go in and edit their CUR 2.0 and tick the box. But in their legacy CUR, can they do that?
Can you repeat the question? I don't think I understood.
Can you modify your legacy CUR to add in the SCAD data, or does it have to be set deployment?
I think it's a set deployment. That's by my understanding.
Yeah, I think 2.0 you can add it, but maybe legacy you have to change it. But yeah, I'll fact check. You keep going.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So the other key point I would like to basically make here is that we basically get usage data from these instances, the billable instances, and that usage data is converted to cost, and then cost is split across the resources that's actually running in that billable instance. For example, EC2 and EKS pods, right? So that is actually a key point I would like to communicate here. The system will actually generate a few tags and metadata information that gets into the CUR. I will talk in detail about that. And that's how actually split cost allocation data works, right? So it's very easy to set it up, right? You have to basically, the setup has to happen in the cost management preferences page, we call it CMC. It's one checkbox, and once you enable it, it gives you option to either select EKS, ECS, or both. The next step is basically you go and enable in your data exports panel, you go and enable the CUR. This can be enabled at the per account level or no per account basis, and the frequency of the CUR doesn't change. It's hourly, daily, or monthly. It actually remains the same. Once the system is enabled, the product or the feature will actually scan all your clusters within that account. And actually start gathering the data for you, right? And this data is made available to you in 24 hours.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. So it's actually the point I'm trying to make is very easy to set it up and configure, and you're good to go from there.
Well, that's actually I would like to see, I'm going to do a quick secondary poll again, which is say 1 vs 2 for no. Who has cost allocation set up who has SCAD set up? So 1 vs 2 for no. Would be good to see who has set it up already in the group, or if anyone's gone in. I just checked and I put it in the chat, but and like it says on the screen, you can go and edit oh no, the lights are turning off. Don't turn off. I'm still here. You can still enable it at your cost and use report if it's legacy or if it's 2.0. So you can just add that feature in. So at the moment, we're on a strong nose for the SCAD setup. Maybe we can influence some users and customers. There we go. There's the light to set up today. All right, let's go back to it. So continue. Let me throw your slides back up.
Yeah.
So are you gonna show this on the console?
Absolutely, I'm going to show this.
So we can skip over these screenshots and go through to the.
Basically, I just want to make sure that I have some backup in case
the internet.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, very quickly. So what happens in CUR when you kind of enable CAD, right? We basically kind of create like 11 new columns. So you can actually see it's very, very obvious what we do. We basically give you a way to compute the cost for each of the line items and break it up into split cost and net split cost and unused cost. The unused cost part is actually very important because somebody has to pay for it, right? Somebody has to pay, even though the EC2 instance has some capacity left over, but that cost has to be shared with like other departments. So that's the reason unused cost becomes very important. So these are the new columns. And then we also basically take some of the system tags from EKS and ECS and create cost allocations tag from that, right? So just focus on the EKS part. There are 6 new tags that we, these are the even EKS kind of system level tags, like for example, cluster name, namespace, node, workload type, workload name, and deployment. These tags are then now extracted from your EKS deployment, and then we create cost allocation tags for them. Then at the pair account level, you don't have to do anything at the pair account level, right? Because this is automatically created for you. So these are created for you.
Can I just double click into that? So the tags are pulled from the container, the ECS tags on the container, and then do customers have to? Because for cost allocation tags, normally you have to go and activate them. Do they still have to do that, or is it?
They don't have to. They don't have to.
So
it's automatically created for you. So that is that's how we basically simplify the kind of user experience here. So what we did is we picked up some of the most commonly used tags, right? The system tags, for example, cluster name, namespaces, right? These are probably actually namespace is one of the most used tag, to be honest with you, right? When people do grouping in their queries, that is the tag they actually use mostly, right?
Yeah.
Now, this we're going to enhance this capability. Basically, George and I'm actually working on a feature here where we'll be adding support for custom labels. So now these are system labels, right? Users don't have a lot of control here because it's already predefined. Now we will let you create a custom label on your pod. And we'll actually then now take that. For example, a custom name could be your business unit name, for example, finance or marketing. So that gives you so much flexibility in the system.
Right. And George, I might pull you in here and just for people who are, and if anyone's joined us, we're talking all about SCAD or the cost allocation for containers that is available in your cost and use report. George, when it comes to these, we've got like namespace, service, task. Can you explain just the hierarchy of what those things are so that people have like a mental kind of image of how these, especially with these tags, is I set this up on my account and I was trying to see what tags were coming in. So maybe if you could guys explain like how it actually works with the tagging and the different elements would be really helpful.
Yeah. So in like I said, a lot of containers. One of the benefits of containers is resource efficiency. So you typically see customers bringing up an EKS cluster, and you have multiple applications from multiple teams deploying to it, right?
Okay.
So, and that is a common kind of a deployment pattern that we see from customers. But then the question, how do you kind of segregate these different applications? Right? You need to probably have, from a permission standpoint, from just an organization grouping standpoint, you want to make sure, there is some sort of clean way to separate out these different apps from different teams all running in the same EKS cluster. And Kubernetes has this construct called namespaces. So namespaces it's just a kind of core part of many things in Kubernetes, but that is one way that we have typically seen customers to segregate these applications.
Correct.
I'm oversimplifying it a little bit maybe, but
that's good. That's fine.
Namespace A belongs to team A, and any app that's being developed by this team belongs to that namespace. And then you can set up a different set of permissions assigned to it, different kind of quotas, resources assigned to that namespace.
Right.
So that is one way of, at a very high level, how you kind of break up Kubernetes cluster across teams. Now, within a namespace, you might have multiple teams deploying. Like if you're going with a microservice architecture, there may be multiple microservices all managed by the same team. So you could have multiple microservices being deployed to the same namespace. And Kubernetes has this workload kind of concept. So there are deployments, there are stateful sets, there are replica sets. All of these are basically, you can think of within a high-level simplification of a microservice or an application. So that is the next level. So you have namespace, which is kind of top level, and then you have workload types, so which could be of different types of deployments, replica sets, stateful sets, and all, and so forth. And what is a deployment? Let's just pick that one. So deployment is basically one or more containers. So you want to make sure your application or microservice is highly available, highly resilient. So you typically want this application to be deployed across multiple hosts. From availability standpoint, it's good to have it spread out. You could have some sort of load balancer in front, which is now distributing the traffic between the different containers that are running behind the scenes. And that is the next level deeper than deployment, which are pretty much pods in Kubernetes terminology. And pods can be made up of one or more containers. Typically, a pod has one container, but you might have sidecar containers, which is doing a kind of like a logging or some other functionality. So you could have more than one container also running in a pod. So that's kind of the high-level layout of that hierarchy of Kubernetes objects. Now it comes back to, okay, this is all good. How does that translate into what I see in cost and usage reports? And what is what is a model that, or like you can kind of slice and dice this in different ways in CUR, and we can probably show in this part of the demo. But what are the questions that customers want to answer? One is they want to say, hey, team A, we know is assigned to namespace A. What is their spend across? We don't care at a microservice level. You want to understand how much the team A spend the last 6 days. So we have that. So in CUR, if you look at the report, there is a namespace level cost allocation tag inserted. So you can kind of on that tag, filter out of a namespace A, what is their spend? That's one level of breaking and looking at the cost. Another one, that team A is too broad. I want to really understand that microservice that belongs to team A, how much cost did that incur? That would be like filtering at a deployment level. Now that's again another tag that's available in CUR cost and usage report. So you can filter at that level. That's another level. And if you want to go even more granular, I just want to understand at a pod level, that is also available. So cost and usage reports with SCAD, you have this ability to look at your costs at different levels based on the questions you're trying to answer.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, before we go back into the demo side, I've got 2 questions in the chat for you. The first, either of you can take this, will we be able to map namespaces compute metrics to namespaces costs, thinking of namespace efficiency optimization? I believe from what you just said, George, that's correct, right? We can see this information there.
I'm sorry, I'm just looking at reading the question just to make sure.
It's okay. So I'm super prepared to read. So yeah, will those namespaces
figure out the cost at a namespace level?
Yeah. So you'll have that information, and we'll show it in a second. But good to check. And then the second, a little bit more complex. Could we use net unused cost divided by net split cost as a proxy for K8 namespace efficiency percentage check? Over to you guys.
I think, Manoj, since we show the unused cost and used cost at a pod level, you can now aggregate all the pods in the namespace, and you can kind of come up with this if you want to calculate efficiency by comparing the actual usage versus unused usage. I think that is possible, right?
The term proxy is important, right? It's not the exact the proxy. Yeah, that's possible, but you should also be careful that there's also this efficiency of the orchestration itself, right? Placement of pods. So the thing is, not every EC2 instance is the same, right? So let's say you have 10 EC2 instances, and as pods are getting placed in these instances, the orchestration has to play, or the orchestrator has to play, or the API server has to play a very important role here, right? Because it has to take those pods and place it correctly. So you're right. It gives you an approximation of the efficiency of the namespaces, but I think there are other variables kind of in the mix here.
Okay. No, thanks, Cloud Asher. That's a good question, a good challenging question.
Very good question. Very good question.
Yeah. Keep them coming, guys. Pop them in the chat. And also, if you want to email after, if you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe to the video. Obviously, keep it up to date. But if you want to follow up any questions on there, I will answer them, or email us costoptimization@amazon.com for all of your cost optimization questions. But should we go into the demo of how we set this up, how we do the queries, and whatnot?
Okay, so let's get back to the demo. So I would like to, in the next maybe a few minutes, I'd like to just walk through how to set it up. How do you, what are the basic steps needed to set this up, right? So let me do that, share screen. Okay.
I wonder how many times a day people say the phrase share screen. Like since COVID, I wonder. There we go, perfect. Yes.
Okay. So I'm actually in the console in the cost billing and cost management area. And when you go to cost management preferences, you can actually see that there is this split cost allocation data section, right? So here you have option to do the following. You can actually either pick ECS. If your deployment is ECS based, you can pick ECS or EKS or both. Yeah.
So you have to enable these. I didn't even realize that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you kind of enable this before you can actually the system kind of recognize that you want split cost allocation. Now with EKS, yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just like I didn't even realize this. This is why we do demos. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, and when you pick like EKS, we do have two options. One is resource based, right, or resource request based. Here, what happens is, based on the request that is made by the pod or the assigned resources to the pod, we actually use that as a metric to compute the cost. Or if you're interested in more real-time usage, you can enable AMP, right? It's the managed Prometheus that we offer, right? This will actually give you more granular, more accurate information about the usage, right? But just keep in mind that AMP has a cost associated with it. It's a very nominal cost, but there's a cost associated with AMP.
Do you know, we actually just had that as a question saying, is there a cost for AMP? So there is a small cost for setting that up.
Very small cost, but when you compare, so we have a calculator. If you go to the documentation for like enabling AMP, there is actually a section at the bottom that talks about what is the cost implication of doing so. It's actually pretty nominal compared to the total percentage of your actual infrastructure. There are steps to set it up. So there is, you have to follow those steps. It's actually very well documented, right? Perfect. This is important. Yeah.
Price information. Thanks, Travis.
Yeah, we are going to add support for CloudWatch very soon. Okay, so that is coming.
Spoilers. I'm joking.
So that is step number one, right? Very easy thing to do. There is you can actually use CLI and API to do this also. That goes without saying here, right?
And before you move on, can we just confirm, someone's asked, where do I see these checkboxes? It's in the which page?
Yeah, so you go to billing and cost management section, right? You can actually search for billing and cost management. You scroll down, there is a cost management preferences area.
Preferences.
Yeah.
And then it's on that page.
And from there, you can actually you click on that. Let me do that again. When you click on it, you basically come to this page where you do all the configuration for your costing tools. In this cost allocation data area, then you have all these options available to you.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, yes.
So that is step number one. Let's talk about step number two. So now you have to basically enable your CUR, right? That's important. So let's say that so these are all the CURs that I've created. So when you can actually create a CUR for payer account or on a per account basis also, right? So when you go to create CUR, I'm going to pick the standard CUR, the legacy CUR. As you scroll down, you can actually see there's a section called Split Cost Allocation Data. This checkbox has to be enabled before you can actually see the split cost allocation data in your CUR, right? Once you enable this checkbox, it takes about 24 hours, up to 24 hours before you actually start seeing the data. Yeah,
right.
So that's all you have to do. Right? So once you take these steps, the data starts flowing and the information starts getting populated into your CUR within 24 hours.
And as we discussed already, for those who maybe joined later, the cost allocation tags will be done for you, so you don't have to go and add those in.
Okay. So any questions on this topic?
No, we can keep. Let me double check. I thought I saw.
Okay,
something.
Fantastic.
No, all good. Yeah.
So I'm gonna stop sharing now. And okay. So the next one I'm going to do.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to interrupt you again. We have had a question. If you have an existing CUR version 2, can you edit? Yes, you can. You can go in and edit it and just tick that little box and start to get the data.
Right. You can do that. That's a very good point. Okay. So now, if there are no more questions, what I'm going to do now is look at some queries and see, like kind of understand the table schema a little bit more to understand what these columns are, what these rows are. And then I will actually run a query that will actually kind of group the data based on namespaces.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'll have to now let me actually do something offline before I start this.
Classic logging in. And while you're doing that, George, I don't know if there's something else you want to recommend people should know or anything like that, bringing it from the container point of view.
I think there I was actually, so while I was kind of preparing for the session, there are a few different interesting blog posts and links that talk more about SCAD, talks more about ECS versus EKS. And these are good references that we can share for users if they're interested in following up. So maybe Steph, I can share with you on our internal chat, and then we can probably share it with the users here.
Yeah, if you have them now, feel free to send them in the private chat, and I can share those. I'm posting a couple up now. So there's this one, which is EKS Split Cost Allocation. And then there's also this one, I think, the ECS batch job for Split Cost Allocation. So, but George, feel free, pop them in the group chat and I'll share them out now. And as always, if you're watching on YouTube, any links we share in the show will be in the show notes below. But let's get over to this demo while George just shoots those over to me.
Okay, no worries. Here we go. Okay. Right. So I think I'm actually using Athena to query the CUR database. There are multiple ways of doing it. You can use QuickSight, you can use Redshift, you can use Athena, or you could use your custom.
Wow, throwback. Using Redshift. Don't use Redshift. I'm joking. I haven't had someone say Redshift in such a long time. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. So there are multiple options you can use to like query your database. We have a lot of customers who actually use their own data mart systems, like BI systems to query, but we have some built-in tools. There are steps documented on how to enable Athena for your CUR, because the CUR actually gets deposited in your this S3 bucket, and inside that bucket there is actually a CloudFormation script that you have to run. This sets up Glue, and Glue then scans your infrastructure and brings it to Athena. So there is a very well documented. And Steph, if you can actually find the link for that thing,
yeah, sure.
The link. Yeah. So it's actually a pretty simple thing to do, right? So let's actually start with some basic like querying, right? I would like to basically see what my table is. The query is running. So here. So this actually is describing what the table actually looks like. So I'll scroll down. It's a pretty large, if you use CUR before, you can actually. It's a very long, very large table. But I say, so here is where the information related to split cost allocation shows up, right? So these are the new rows that we add for split cost allocation. For example, the split light item usage, the usage ratio, the split cost, the unused cost, and we also have a column that will convert this cost to the public on-demand cost. For some customers, that's actually very important. One thing to be noted that all the cost calculation that we do is amortized, right? This is not unblended cost, it's amortized cost, right? So these are the columns that gets added to CUR by default the moment you enable split cost data, right? The moment you enable SCAD, this shows up, right?
Yeah.
The next rows that you see, these are the cost allocation tags that gets created automatically from your EKS system labels, right? We talked about this in the slide, right? Cluster name, deployment, namespace, node, workload name, and workload tag, right? So this is how the schema gets modified the moment you enable SCAD. Okay. Any questions here?
Okay. No, that's really helpful to see them all together.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. So again, I would really encourage you to play around with this thing. We also have a documented page which has a lot of queries that's pre-built, and you can actually run and test it once you set up Athena or whatever data mart you want to run. So let's actually now go to a different query, which is again very similar query. But this time we can see the schema, and we'll actually also see the data that actually comes up. Yeah. Again, I'm using Athena, so it takes a little bit of time.
No worries, all the data.
Yeah, so you can actually see that this is how the schema kind of looks like. And yeah, so basically what I've done is here I'm just displaying the split cost allocation data. Schema and the data that actually shows up with it, right? So you can actually see here, right? The cluster name shows up here. The node name shows up here, right? The namespace shows up here. This is actually very important. Most customers today use namespace as their grouping mechanism, but that actually becomes very limiting very quickly. because if you are a very large company and you have lots of deployment, mapping namespaces to your team becomes very, very difficult, and it's not a very scalable way to do it. And for that, the whole custom labels project is actually very important. Yeah. So this gives you an idea about how the queries are going to look like. Now, the final query we'll run is this is a little bit more complicated query, right? So here, what we're going to do is we'll actually compute the monthly cost, CPU cost and memory cost for a namespace within a cluster, right?
Okay, I like it.
This is actually one of the queries in our well-architected labs. So fundamentally, what we are actually, you can see it very clearly. For the line item usage type of CPU hours, we are going to combine split line item cost and the unused cost. This is actually a very important point, the unused cost part, right? Because as I said before, if you are not using your EC2 instance to capacity, somebody has to bear the cost of it, right? Let's take an example. If you have 64 vCPUs, and if you're consuming, let's say, 48 vCPUs, the rest of the vCPUs are unused. Where did that cost go? So what we do is we basically calculate the usage ratio of the parts and then take that ratio and split the unused cost proportionally based on that usage ratio.
Yeah, then people who watch us a lot and do a lot of FinOps will recognize this kind of conversation as what we talk about with unused reserved instances, untagged resources. It's all the same. And so in general, if you have this, there is this consideration of where you need to charge this to. Maybe it would be the same, maybe it's distributed, but at least now with this query, you can see where that is. But yeah, go on, let's see what happens when we run the query.
Absolutely. And this is how you can identify wastage, right? You can actually tell, okay, my EC2 instance's efficiency is now not 100%, right? Or my cluster's efficiency is not 100%. Okay, so let's actually run this query and see how it looks like, right? It's going to take a little bit of time because there's a lot of group buys here.
No worries. And also time-wise, we have about 10 minutes left. And if we have time, I'd love to pick George's brain on any quick optimizations people can do for containers in general, if there's any kind of like these 5 things. But yeah, okay, let's look at the results.
Okay, so here is what happens when you run this query. So you can actually see that for the month of October, on this particular day, this cluster, and with this namespace within that cluster has consumed has actually generated a cost burden of so many dollars and for compute and so many dollars for memory. And here basically the cost of that that namespace within that cluster for that day, right?
Okay.
That's the level of granularity you can have. You can actually also break the cost. You can actually list the used cost and unused cost, right? It's just
so yeah, where would the unused cost come into play?
So
here in the same way.
So the unused, this column that you see here is the combination of the used cost and unused cost. So if you look at the query, right?
Yeah.
If you look at the query here, right? What it does is it basically will take if the usage type for the usage type of vCPU hours, it will take split line item split cost, and they'll take split line item unused cost and add it together for this query. You could actually, you don't have to add it. You can actually just show it as columns, right? Then it will actually absolutely show you the used and unused cost for the usage type CPU for that namespace.
So is that assuming that, for the namespace? So if you provisioned, okay, let me see if I understand this. So say I have in my container like ECS. Wait, is ECS or EKS? My mind's gone.
This EKS. We're running this query for
EKS.
Yes.
George is probably like, oh god, come on, Steph, we've been through this. In EKS, I've chosen a namespace. When I provision my namespace, I define the CPU I want to use, and then in this cost, I have the CPU I used as well as the unused of that. So the combination of the spec. Is that right?
Yeah. Here we are kind of aggregating for all the ports within the namespace. You could actually, as George was saying before, right? You could actually go as granular as the pod level. You could actually say for pod 1, here is the data. and you can actually get use cost memory, use cost compute, everything, right? But in this query, what we're doing is we're summing up. For example, there is a namespace, let's say finance. I'm making it up, okay? Finance
Yeah.
namespace. And that namespace has 100 pods, right? So when we run this query, we'll take up all the 100 pods within that namespace, sum up the cost, right? And then display it here. Can I see? So here, if you read this this line item carefully, for this day in October, 1st of October, this is the cluster, this is the namespace, and this is the aggregated cost of all the pods. That is for CPU, and the aggregated cost of all the memory usage for this pod, and the total cost is this much for that day for that namespace.
Okay, so it's everything under the namespace, because the namespace could be used by a pod, but it could also not be used by anything. And so it's combining the two.
Correct.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. So
awesome. Yeah.
Again, this is just one of the query, right? You can actually modify this query to say that, okay, I want to list used cost, unused cost, and basically group by, let's say deployment type, or group by, the cluster itself, or other artifacts that we have provided. So we have 6 tags today that can be used to basically group and show this information out, right? Very flexible system. And since these are columns in the CUR, it gives you a lot of flexibility. If you're really good at querying, you can actually create any kind of reports.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
And then,
so that is all I had. Can I take another minute and just quickly talk about the roadmap?
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Then I will hand it over to, if you have the questions, I can answer those questions. Okay, very quickly. So I started this meeting by saying that, this is a cost allocation for shared resources problem, right? We have shared resources, and ECS and EKS are not the only kind of shared resources we have. We have many other shared resources, as we're talking about. Things like S3 is actually an important one. Then we are thinking about networking data transfer, right? For example, the data transfer cost between AZs becomes very, very critical. And then there are things like load balancers and NAT gateways, and things like firewalls that can be shared inside a VPC by multiple services. How do we attribute costs for that? We're kind of working on that. We're working on GPUs, adding GPU support for this feature. For example, machine learning is very popular. Everybody runs machine learning. Every application has become machine learning application now. So to serve the Gen AI problem, we're going to add GPU support to this. For example, you can actually say that, okay, I have an infrastructure that has CPU, GPU, and memory. Here's how you're going to split it. It's very complex, the computational problem. We're working on it, right? Then we will work on things like shared database services, for example, RDS could be. But so there's a very strong pipeline for this from a roadmap perspective. And we'll actually share more information as it comes. So I just wanted to give you an idea about where we're going with this. And this year, we are also working on custom label support for this feature, and adding support for CloudWatch as a observability agent.
Brilliant. All right. So much content to come out in this space in the future. So make sure you stay up to date. We'll always be mentioning things that we see on the show. And check out the CFM blog channel. That always has a lot of updates that we like to show. We have our secret Richard coming up. Oh, yeah, George, go on.
Just one last thing, just to add on. So a lot of EKS's roadmap is driven by what customers tell us what's important for them. So I just want to make a quick shout out to and I'll share that with you, Steph, here. So we have this EKS roadmap on GitHub. It's a public roadmap. You can go comment. So, Manoj shared a few of the ideas, things we're thinking about. Would love to hear, hey, this one of them is more important for you and why. Would love to get your feedback through the GitHub roadmap link that was shared.
I love this. Yes, please do. And generally, now this is my new thing everyone will hear me talk about all the time, which is if you have feedback, 95% of the decisions we make on products come from customer feedback. So speak to your account teams, get them to raise product feature requests, PFRs, or you can actually do it yourself in the console. Please go do this. People think, oh, it won't matter. It does matter. Anything you think and why it's important to you. That is the thing that we want to hear. All right. As we're bringing up, if Secret Richard wants to come up with his summary of the show to finish us out, just as one more thing while he's doing that is next week we have an open slot. So I want to know what topic should we cover? Now, we're finishing at the show. There might be some time for chatter, but if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching anywhere, if you're watching on Spotify, then drop it in the comments. I want to know, what topics do you want us to cover? We have a couple of free slots for this season, and I want to hear from everybody what they're interested in, what challenges they're having. Okay, there we go. Let's do our summary. So it's weird to see Steph without her mountain of merch. You know, I was at this event today. This t-shirt, let me just see if I can turn, has got like a cool Dublin Day logo. Got this today, and 2 chocolate bars. I'm a swag queen. Yes, I do miss all my merch, all my hats are everywhere. Okay, so on to the serious ones. Driving visibility drives accountability. Yes, you want to make sure people know what they're spending money on. SCAD enables cost distribution at the pod level, which is awesome, and custom labels are on the roadmap. Thank you so much, Richard. And thank you so much to these guys. You've been awesome guests taking me through answering all my dumb questions. And thank you to everyone watching. We've got some great questions today. Always love to see that. As a reminder, please make sure you check out the YouTube channel. That is where all of our backlog of over 100 videos are, all of your cost optimization needs. Let us know what you think what content you want to see in the future, and hopefully we'll provide it. But thank you so much, you two, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Thank you.